Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca Tuttle. If you had a chance to join us with 191 others, if you could believe it, for episode 2 of our Coffee Time with Masterminds this morning, I just wanted to reach out on behalf of Cynthia and Pieta and myself and say thank you so much for joining us. We had a great conversation, but if you did tune in, we had some echo, we had some delay, some glitch in the streaming, and live is live, so that happens, unfortunately, but we stuck around afterward and we corrected all of the glitches, and we are looking forward to you joining us next Friday at 10:30 for episode 3, Glitch Free. Take care, guys.
All right, everybody, we are live. Nice to see everyone. Yay, it's Friday, and we are still in quarantine. You have joined Coffee Time with Mastermind. And the idea here is to have a conversation, grab a cup of coffee that hopefully lasts as long as your coffee does. So, this coffee time is a series of conversations we are having that are important and urgent to leaders of mission-based organizations. So welcome everybody. We have a couple of housekeeping items just to remind people who may be new at Facebook Live is that we're going to be on for about 40 minutes, but we really want this to be a conversation. We want as much engagement as possible. So please use the chat box on your screen, no matter what platform you're using. It should be on your right, your left, the bottom, or the top. And say hi and tell us where you're from. Last week, we had people from all over the country. This wonderful country. People were chiming in, and afterward, they emailed us and told us all kinds of cool stuff, and they had wonderful questions, and we'll talk about that during this broadcast today. So please say hi and tell us where you're from. Okay, if you think this video is important for someone else, please share the video, pass it on, and tag that person. This will stay on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel afterwards. So let's get started. One of the things that I enjoy doing in my organization is we start meetings with bright spots. It's a great way to center yourself and to bring gratitude to your life and to your day, even in this craziness that we're all dealing with. What we also want to hear is, what are your bright spots? What are you grateful for? I'll start. My bright spot is that yesterday I woke up with a ton of energy, the kind of energy I used to wake up with all the time, where I would get up and look forward to going to work and put on a dress and do my hair. And you know what I did? I did all of that. I put on a dress and shoes and I did my hair, and it just felt so good and so normal. And I was so grateful for that. So, Peter, you want to give us a bright spot?
Oh, well, I think this morning I'm especially grateful for coffee itself. It's life-giving energy. I'm also grateful that I'm able to get out and be active and spend time in the out of doors, either just walking around my neighborhood or exercising in the street in front of my house. That's been fantastic for me.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, walking is great. And if you have a dog, it's even better. All right. And keep those comments coming. Where are you joining us from and what is your bright spot? Rebecca, do you have a bright spot to share?
My bright spot is that actually I wrote 5 grants this week, and one of them came through as funded, so that's a huge bright spot for us. So yeah, we have 4 others pending, and we shall see.
That's
fantastic.
Awesome. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. And in a while, you'll be able to talk about what it is you do and why that's such a big deal for you and the organizations you work with. But right now, we're going to talk a little bit about why listen to us. Why did we start this? There are many conversations, important ones that are happening right now. how to lead during this time, how to pivot your programs during the time of the pandemic, how to go after federal funding during this time. And those are all important conversations. But we've been in this anywhere between 4 to 7 weeks, depending on where you're at in the country or where you're at in your town or state. And the truth is, we're probably going to be in this for a lot longer than most of us were thinking. And what we found to be missing in those conversations is planning for the future. There will be a time where we will say post COVID, and the planning for that should be right now. Otherwise, you won't be ready for what would be the next disruption. And if you think this was disruptive, going back to work, to your workplace and doing and going back to your programming in the way that you're used to, or even taking on the new way of working, could be less disruptive if leaders begin to plan for that right now. And so, what we're hoping is that this is a conversation about what are you doing to plan for your post COVID future, and or you're going to hear on 1 to 2 topics per week 3 different perspectives for how to plan for your post COVID future. Let's go to introductions. We'll tell you a little bit of who we are, and then we're going to start talking about a topic everybody wants to hear about, and that's funding. Peter, do you want to start with introductions?
Sure. I'm Pieta Blakely. I am the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting, and I help mission-based organizations measure and maximize their impact.
Thank you. Rebecca.
I'm Tuttle. I'm the founder and creator of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good, and we help grant writers, new, emerging, seasoned, write grants for grant funding, and we also teach them how to do it.
Wonderful. All right, great. We have Myra LaSalle. Hi, Myra. How are you? Who is from New York City? Thank you, Myra, for joining us. So I am Cynthia Rojas, and I have the honor of being a associate consultant with Field Partners, and we are a national consulting firm that helps leaders make better decisions through an array of services, which includes strategic planning, strategic alliances, training. I specialize in change management, and we have a great team of people who come together and work with organizations so that they can do their great work together. Today, we're talking about fundraising, and many organizations have had their fundraising efforts or initiatives disrupted. Either they were planning an event and needed to pivot or still planning on how to pivot. They're not able to deliver their programs. And so that's become a problem. There are organizations that are still trying to figure out how to remain funded during this time and how to pivot their programs and stay true to their funding. There are also organizations who are also looking at or wondering what can we do today that would help our financial sustainability post COVID. And so Rebecca can get us started with that conversation. But Rebecca, you've been working a lot with organizations. You wrote 5 grants this week and helping them rethink their financial sustainability plan. What are your thoughts?
So what I think I said last week that I have been spending an awful lot of time listening to foundations and going on webinars and participating in conversations about how philanthropists are helping people in the COVID pandemic. And a lot of funders are allowing you to use the funds that you do have with them in other ways. For example, you could maybe take, if it were a 2-year grant, an advance on those funds, so the following year's funding could maybe come into this year, or you could write to them and ask for those emergency funds and explain to the funder sort of how you plan to use those resources differently to help you through this pandemic.
So previous situation, not from right now, but at another point when fundraising was disrupted, here's the situation that happened. This organization was facing a shortfall and without an additional chunk of money, let's say a couple of $100,000, a substantial chunk, their organizations was going to have to go through some layoffs. So they approach funders and they ask for the money, and they're trying to be really clear and really transparent about the need, but they get a no. What do you think they could have done better, or how could we learn from that for this disruption in funding?
That's interesting. Rebecca, do you have a response to that? So they got to know, the funders.
Yes. So you're operating your organization, and Pieta had explained that you had $300,000 that was not funded, and you're going to other funders asking for support for that $300,000 or components of that resource from maybe a host of different foundations, and they said no. And so what do you do? Is that what you're asking, Pieta? Before we approach funders, that we understand, first of all, how is that $300,000 to be allocated? And then secondly, with all of this that's going on outside of our organizations and then inside, we need to articulate to a funder that it's not necessarily about the money that we're asking them to provide. It's more about the people who will be impacted if that $300,000 is lost or disrupted or in jeopardy. And so in this case of Pieta's scenario, my suspicion is that they weren't able to articulate why they needed those funds and what that devastating impact would be upon their organization without those funds. And they treated maybe that foundation as more of an avenue just to make up that funding deficit. And remember, when we partner with foundations, they are making an investment in our organization, and it's our job as grant writers, as folks who are fundraising, to help present that partnership opportunity, that collaborative relationship to funders, no matter the circumstance. And if we were to call back from last week where we talked about, right now there's crisis all around us, but we can't be operating in a crisis mode inside. And so my suspicion also is that crisis maybe got in the way, the crisis internal maybe got in the way of that ask with that particular funder.
So, you bring up a good point. That's just one more reason to always be maintaining good data, so that you can draw that picture. I mean, I think we think of data as just being numbers on a sheet. But it really helps make it clear, this is how many people we reach with this service. This is the impact that we expect to have because of providing this service. So this is therefore how many kids are not going to get lunch, families are not going to have housing, young people are not going to graduate from high school as a result of this budget shortfall.
All right. So Pieta, you keep reminding us knowing your data is really important, and it doesn't have to be complicated at this point. Mm-hmm. But what I hear both of you saying is that if you are going to have conversations with funders, make sure you understand the impact that you're having and the impact you won't be able to have, or the impact or how it would negatively impact your consumers if you don't stay in operation.
Yeah, that's right. Right. I mean, either to be able to say, here is exactly who we serve and how this disruption is going to interrupt that level of service, or to be able to point to changes in need, or even just to highlight how much need existed even before the disruption. And so for that, I mean, having your finger on the pulse of population level data, that might tell you something like how many people in this community are living in conditions of poverty, how many of the high school students in this district graduate, how many people in this community live with food insecurity or a particular health issue. And a lot of that data you're going to get from public sources will come from the census, the school department, your city's health department, sources like that. It's largely done for you.
You are in Boston,
I'm
right?
in Boston.
And Rebecca is up north in the state of Connecticut, and I'm further down nearer to New York. Peter was giving us an example of a nonprofit that went to a funder and said, hey, we have a shortfall in our budget. Our staff are going to lose their jobs. Can you help us? And they weren't successful. And what Peter and Rebecca are saying is that take it from the approach of your consumers. What's the impact that will happen in the community? Funders although they partner with organizations, they want to see real impact, real change happening in the community. All right, Rebecca. So you're talking to clients all the time. You won a grant this week. You're helping people write. What other advice should people be doing now that will impact their post-COVID future and put them in a better position?
Okay, so that's a great question, Cynthia. And I just want to jump back quick into an example that I give my students with relation to what we were talking about, how to put that scenario of that 300,000 into perspective. So here's an example I give my students. If I were running a class teaching grant writing, right? Or let's say we're all coming on live here today to teach grant writing. And we reached out to all of our family and our friends and our neighbors and our clients, and we said, hey, we're coming on live to teach grant writing. You have to be here, otherwise it's not going to be any fun. Nobody's going to be interested, right? Versus, hey, we're coming on live Friday at 10:30 and we'll be here every week. Why don't you join us? Because we're going to have this, and this impact on the community that we're sharing information with. So it's a different way to approach a funder, and it's a different way to approach people to get them to invest and participate in what it is that you are asking them to do. And so I like that example with my students so that they can see how we should be approaching funders when we're making that ask for that partnership. Make sense?
I love that. Rebecca, what happens if you don't have a relationship with your funder? Or the relationship is mostly through the application process?
What organizations can do now is they should start looking at what was the impact or what is the impact that this COVID-19 pandemic is having on our organization and our fundraising initiatives, our grant writing, our fund development. Even if you are an organization that is membership based, what is the impact that this is having on our organization? And when we want to go beyond COVID-19 and look at other funding opportunities, we need to talk about what Pieta was discussing earlier about what does the data show and what is the impact, and then show those opportunities to funders. So there are funders who are funding outside of emergency response funding and through their traditional initiatives and priorities. And if you look at what's going on inside, then you could potentially open yourself up to additional opportunities while you're focusing on the urgent need right now and securing emergency funding. But when you're planning for your post-COVID future, what funders would you like to engage in conversation with to see about pursuing those opportunities later on?
I think that's great advice. You know, there are these unique opportunities now with funders. Many foundations are doing webinars or bringing people to the table, organizational leaders, to hear what's happening on their end. And Rebecca, is that a good way to show up and begin to build a relationship and they get to know your name and your organization?
Absolutely. You should always be talking about your mission everywhere you go. And whenever there's an opportunity for you to share your mission with the community, you absolutely should. And what you don't want to be discussing with people is, oh, you know, we had this funding and it got cut because of this virus and nobody knows what to do and we have such an influx of clients and we don't have enough supplies. Would you make an investment in that, or would you make an investment in an organization that says, you know, well, take my mission, right? Grant Write Now's mission is grant writing for good. No matter what, we are helping grant writers find avenues to write grants and secure funding for their good programs, for their good work. And so we want to keep that mission in the forefront. Have we had to make adjustments in how we deliver that service and our education? Absolutely. However, here is how we made those adjustments, and here is how we show promise moving forward. And we would love to partner with you in that momentum. And you know, it's difficult right now. We're all facing challenges. However, challenges aren't always devastating. I mean, they certainly have devastating effects, but they're not always devastating. Sometimes even devastation presents promising opportunity.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Pieta, do you want to add to the conversation?
Sue says that her organization has been able to secure additional funding by appealing to their funders who want to make sure that the organization is whole and can continue to be a strong presence in the community after COVID-19. We have shown the gap we will have as a result of canceled events, etc., but the majority of folks are most interested in the moment.
So Sue is from Boston, Project Hope, and she's the development director. Hi, Sue. And so Sue has really great relationships with her foundations.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is no surprise to me that she probably was able to reach out, and these foundations know her work, know Project Hope work. And so they wanted to make sure that Project Hope can continue to deliver these services. And so the relationship becomes really, really important. And what Rebecca is saying, if you don't have a relationship, because you're still a startup, or you don't have a director of development, and you are a CEO who does everything, there are opportunities for you to join larger groups, webinars hosted by foundations and other different kinds of funders, but also talk to other people in your industry. This is the time where, remember, leaders should be leading. You should have staff managing the response. You begin to build partnerships, because you also have to look at this in the long term. The next 6 to 12 months are going to define your organization, but there will be a post 12-month period. And so you want to prepare for that now. Rebecca?
Absolutely. And, you know, to Susan's point about canceled events and, you know, planning for next steps, even if your event is canceled and it's a large scale event, it's a gala, or, you know, you maybe had a gathering of your community that rallies around your mission and raises the support that you need to, you know, carry out the services and projects and programs you offer. Even if it's canceled, it doesn't mean that when you go inside, meaning sit down in your organization and work through some of that stress and struggle, it doesn't mean that you can't host that event again, or it doesn't mean that you can't still host an event in your organization. It's just, what does that look like? How is that different? And how are you going to do that? Because remember, a lot of us go to these kinds of events. They're fun. It's a great way to socialize. It's a great way to, you know, see your mission in action. It's a great way to pull people together so that they can see what they really want to know is, if I give, if I support you, if I am partnering with you, what does that partnership look like? And so you can use storytelling, and Cynthia, you are an ace at storytelling. We should talk about that in one of our mastermind sessions. But
we should
use
do a
storytelling,
session.
you could use video, you could do non-events. There's so much opportunity ahead of us to deliver our services and our, you know, community partnerships. It's just going to be different. And so taking the time now to have communications with funders and let them know, you know, while our event is postponed, or while our event is moving online, or, you know, things are going to be different, entrust that the funders that do support you, and even the ones that maybe you've not yet met, entrust that they will have enthusiasm for what it is that you're proposing. You just have to be mindful and strategic and comfortable with what it is that you are proposing.
A really, I think Cynthia made this point when we were on the phone, just the three of us last week, about the number of events and the burden on organizations of throwing these events, and how we felt like in some situations there was so much rush to move to the next event that the follow through wasn't really there, and that the organizations weren't maximizing on the relationship building opportunity of the events.
I love that, Pieta. And so I'm a big proponent of, if you're going to do an event, then post-event strategy has to be even more important or more of a focus than the event itself, right?
Yeah.
Events award you an opportunity to bring friends into your organization, new individuals who can learn about your mission, see what you do. And so once the event is over, many organizations, which is what you're saying, Peter, are running on to do the next event. And what needs to happen is a really thoughtful strategy for post-event follow-up, so that you can turn those invitees or those participants into future donors. And so I also want to just say, I've been using the word foundation and funders, but the same goes for major donors.
Yep.
Think about, maybe you recategorize major donors. Some people donors $1,000, and some it's $100 or $25,000. But think about your donors right now. What do you think they would like to know about your organization during this pandemic? Send them an email, or like Simone Joyot, who's a very well-known fundraiser, a newsy letter. So it's not a newsletter and it's not a letter, it's a newsy letter. And so it's a little bit longer than a letter, but not as long as a newsletter. Let your donors know what you're doing to get through this pandemic and how you're planning for the post-COVID future. Donors want to hear that. They're your investors. They want to hear that.
So you're really
Rebecca?
saying, be focused on the relationship building. Just like before we got in this call, Cynthia, you and I were talking about programs going virtual.
Thank you, Myra, for joining us. We'll see you next Friday. Thank you. Go ahead, Peter. You were saying?
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about we were talking about taking a program virtual, and you and I were having an offline conversation about, like, what's the opportunity in that and what's lost, and how would you actually document that change. So it sounds like what we're talking about here is, maybe because some organizations were focused on the delivery model of holding a gala or whatever event, whether it's a walkathon, a bikeathon. I'm devastated that my bike ride this summer is going to be canceled. All those events, but how can we focus on the camaraderie building, on the community building, on the connections, absent the actual coming together?
This is the time to do it. This really is the time to do it. Donors want to hear from you. There's nothing sad for a donor. Well, there are a lot of sad moments. I shouldn't say nothing sadder, but it's sad when we donate to an organization, and for us, it could be considered a big donation, and maybe for the organization, it's not. But to never hear from an organization outside of the thank you letter is often a sad moment, because if we're donating to you, we care for you, and we want to know you're pulling through.
Yeah.
Rebecca, we're getting close. We're about 7-8 minutes in. I do want to mention Renee thanking Peter for this great information, especially for individuals new to the nonprofit area.
Great to see you, Renee. Thanks for coming.
I have to tell you, kudos to you if you're new to nonprofit. And wow,
At this point in time,
It's
Yeah.
like being a banker a new banker in 2009, right? It's like, whoa. But hang in
But you
there,
know what?
Renee.
Now's the time
Yeah,
because, I sometimes think back to the dot-com boom of the 90s, right? And there was this period there where we were so excited about the internet. Most people here are too young to remember. It was new and exciting. But if you could run a business online, you got funding. Like the fact that it was online was the thing, and they did not necessarily have to have a business plan, right? Sorry if you can hear that. It's the dog announcing that the mail is here. So, so that industry collapsed, which made us separate the message from the medium, made us understand, yeah, there's a lot of power in taking your business online, but it has to be a business that makes sense, right? I think
right.
at times like this, the fluff is gone, right? We're
Right.
stripped down. We have to be more rigorous than ever. We have to be very careful in how we design programs, how we deliver, right? How we fundraise. As a result, we're going to end up with stronger, better programs, right?
Yes.
In some ways, I think this is a great time to get started.
I think so. I think so. And Myra's no longer on the line. I happen to know Myra, but she's a crisis manager in the New York City schools. And so there's a whole science
Wow.
to crisis.
Yeah,
And if you're coming into the nonprofit sector now during this crisis, you will be prepared for anything.
that's right.
And so you're right on. This is the time to do it. And what better sector to be in? This and probably healthcare first responders. Really just making sure that our most vulnerable individuals and families continue to be served
Yeah.
despite the pandemic.
You know,
Rebecca, any other thoughts? I mean, this is your world. You're in this every day. You're talking to people. You were very cautious wanting to make this simple for people because there's a lot of information thrown at us. And I heard you loud and clear. Build your relationships now, even if you don't have them, because there will be a post-COVID future. Also, be a part of any group or webinar or training that's being done by your foundation or funder so that they get to hear your name and they see you show up. And use this time to begin relationships with your donors and reach out to your donors now and let them know what you're doing and planning for the future. Any Rebecca?
yes, so I want to touch on when people give to our organization, no gift is too small. Whether they gave you $5 or $50,000, they're making an investment in your organization. I know I keep using that word over and over, but when we invest in something, we make a commitment to it. There's something within us that resonates with you, and that's why we want to invest in you, because we want to see the success come through. And so don't ever underestimate how much someone gives monetarily, but also realize that people are giving their time, they're giving their talents, they're giving their knowledge, they're volunteering. That to me is all stewardship, it's all fundraising, it's all grant writing. And funders want to know, how are you involving volunteers in your programs? How are you engaging stakeholders in your work? So don't underestimate people's willingness to give, because their willingness to give outside of financially, that's invaluable. That is unbelievable. And because we invited them in, and I'm not saying they need an invitation, but because we were welcoming of them to come in and help us with that, you have to express that gratitude. You have to say, we couldn't have done this without you. And they might know someone who knows someone at a foundation or sits on a board, or they might know someone and they want to donate to you, or that what's going on right now is going to be memorable for the rest of our lives. And 5 years down the road from now, if they came and volunteered their time, talents, skills, etc., they might give a gift to you, give a legacy to you later on. So treasure and appreciate the gifts and the support that you're receiving outside of just those dollars. It's going to come back to you. And so I like the idea of having a newsie. Did you call it a newsie, Cynthia? It was newsie?
A newsy letter. A newsy letter.
I love that idea. And you should be sharing those ideas. You know, pick up the phone, tell the funder, hey, this is tough right now. Here's what we're doing. Here's some of the gaps that we found. But more importantly, how are you doing as the funder? How can we lend support to you, given you have given so much support to us in return? So, you know, reach out to funders, let them know what's going on, but ask them, how can we help you? We should all be helping each other right now, and not just thinking about the conversation we had earlier about how are we going to make up that $300,000, because it's so much more than just the money. Always. And that's what makes you successful when you're raising funds and writing grants and engaging people in your mission.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Pieta, we have about 2 minutes. Do you have any thoughts, any final thoughts, or you want to contribute to what Rebecca said?
My final thought is always, you know, keep track of your data. And it's not data for data's sake. It's data for telling evocative stories. Right?
Oh, I love that.
And that's why you need that.
Yeah. I want to end with this because this is a learning I just realized. Rebecca, I love this idea of asking your funders, is there something I can do for you? Funders, this is new to them. And so they may need some data, right? Do they want you to ask your families how they're doing, or to ask the people that you serve how they're doing? They might ask you to check in with their staff, with your staff, and they want to know the well-being of staff during time. So I love that, because it's not, Rebecca, you're always telling me, make sure funders are not being perceived as an ATM, but as a partner. And so that's a great conversation to have. Hey, Kathy from Community Foundation, I want to talk to you about how you're doing and what can we do to help you during this time. Wow, what a conversation that would be. That's awesome. Next week, we're going to be talking about what, Pieta?
I already forgot. Next week, we're talking about adapting your program for adaptations that programs are making right now during the time of COVID-19, and how we can be documenting and capturing these changes, because we are not just waiting this out and then reverting back to business as usual. Let's not lose the learning opportunities that are happening in all these little experiments that are getting run. Let's document them, bring them forward into the future.
Wonderful. So if, again, this is about joining the conversation, and if you are having to pivot and you are documenting what this change might be, because you may be restructuring your program in the long haul, we want to hear from you. I want to acknowledge, I want to say hi to Rosanna, but also acknowledge that Rosanna works for the Universal Healthcare Foundation. So she's also a funder and an advocacy organization. And she writes, funders may also be interested in what organizations are seeing on the ground. So again, you want to start relationship building with the foundation, you don't know where to begin, ask them, do they need some information that you may be able to provide them? Again, that's my takeaway today. Okay, so we are about the, yeah. Hi, Pieta.
I don't, everybody who's here, Leroy, good to see you, Benjamin.
Weisner, did I spell that right?
Yep.
Nice. I mean, did I say
Cynthia,
that right? Yeah.
I think it's really important to, first of all, thank you so much to everyone who's joining us. It's really important to share with our group here that we had over 336 viewers tune into our first episode, and that's fantastic.
Amazing.
And we're so appreciative of that. And so I hope that you stick with us. If you have ideas of what we could talk about, Rosanna, if you want to come on our program, others, if you want to join us and join the conversation, it's not limited. The only criteria is you need a coffee mug. So, but this is fantastic. Yeah. So please
If you have
continue
additional
with us and
talk about, put them in the comments, because we will keep reviewing the comments on this after the show is live.
Yes. So we still get to see the comments. And 2 comments last week that came through loud and clear from a couple of people was, one, thank you, because I didn't even think that I had to plan for this. I didn't even think this was going to last longer than what you're saying. And so it really helped reframe me. And so I'm glad that organizations are starting to realize this, we may be in this for the long haul. And so real planning and strategizing should happen now. And another thing we heard a couple of times is what we talked about last week, and it was a mix of fundraising, data, and leadership, could also be applied in other aspects of their life, whether personal or in their workplace, whether or not they are leaders. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and we welcome comments in those conversations as well. And so next week we'll be here at the same time. And we want to say thank you. Thank you. And please share this video with anyone you think would benefit from this or should be invited to next week's talk. Rebecca, do you want to bye? And then Pieta?
thank you for just joining us. And one of the other comments that we received also is that we're talking about this, and maybe people aren't all thinking about it, but we're talking about it from a place of forward momentum and not deficit, right? That's really important. If we're going to help people move forward, I mean, we're moving forward too. We're learning as we go as well, the 3 of us. If we're going to do that, we have to do that with direction from a place of positivity, that there is a silver lining, as difficult as it is to find right now, because otherwise we're gonna be stuck where we are and not able to move forward out of this, and we won't be prepared for another wave of this, right? So that was one of the comments that I got last week that really resonated with me, was that we're talking about things from a place of here's where you go, and not we're stuck in the mud and we can't move.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Pieta, do you want to say?
I think taking that asset-based perspective is so important. Today, Rebecca, you said we're in a crisis, but we can't operate from a place of crisis.
I love that.
How do we take this asset-based perspective in everything that we do, right? In the way we lead through it, in the way we think about this time. A lot of things are lost, but we also have to look at the opportunity, and we have to be planning actively and engaging with the post-COVID future.
Thank you. And with that, we say goodbye, and we'll see you again next Friday, same time, Facebook Live, 10:30. Coffee time with Masterminds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great day.